What do you remember about the move to Cody?
Well, one of the things that impressed me was that when we moved, and all this stuff was in these big trucks, and of course they were Taggart's trucks, I assume. I don't know that, but I assume they were because they were just trucks. Was that Dad would not leave Cowley until there was a tarp over it all. Did you ever see a truck loaded with perfectly good things that weren't covered and how awful it looks?
Mm-hmm.
Talk about Okies, you know, it's just, you read about it in the stories, and everything looks like junk. And I can remember him, he would not let the truck leave without a tarp over it, because he didn't want anybody to see what was on it.
So, rather than protection for the goods.
Yes, he wanted it to look neat and tidy.
Covered, sure.
See, he didn't want anybody seeing what was in there. And of course, I was just thrilled to death when we moved up here because of that beautiful home. It was such a beautiful place, Hank. Just stop and think what a move that was for them. And Tom Molesworth decorated it before we moved into it.
Did he?
Mm-hmm. And I think the draperies for the living room are still up in that cedar closet. They were dark green brocade, you know. And the Chinese rugs and the Orientals and the whole thing, Tom Molesworth did it. He completely furnished the house, and he completely, I mean, even the pictures on the walls and everything, Tom did. And it was so beautiful. Of course, there again, I was conscious of things like that, see, so that's the only thing. And it was, well, just stop and think what that must have meant.
Do you remember?
5 tiled bathrooms to move into, you know, for a family that size. Marvelous thing for our family with so many babies.
Do you remember anything about the preliminaries, about how they came to choose that particular house?
Only I can tell you the houses that they thought of. That one of that Tommy Trimmer owns on Alger, is it? That big brick house that Tom Trimmer owned. He hasn't lived in it for years, but it was one of his. And then that one that the Stumps lived in on Wyoming Avenue there, on Salisbury. I mean, yeah, where we lived, you know. Yeah. They talked about buying Charlie Stump's house too. And do you know how much they paid for that house, Hank?
Somebody told me.
$15,000 is all that house cost them. They couldn't have put a bathroom in for that now, of course. And it was, of course, it had just been done because Mr. Furtick killed himself right after it was done. So just imagine, I mean, everything was brand new.
Who was Furtick?
Well, he was an oil man that lost his money in the oil business.
Was he the one who owned the house before?
Mm-hmm.
I see.
The thing was, Mr. The lawyer, what was his name? Rankin, Mr. Rankin. Mm-hmm. He built the house originally, and it was only half of what the house was. He built the house, and then when Furtick bought it, he built all that tail end on it, you know.
Where the den is.
Mm-hmm. And
the master bedroom.
And the girls' bedroom, all that back there, see. So that, and it was all brand new, see. And I don't know whether you remember or not, but all of the floors in that house are maple. Mm-hmm. In those little mosaic patterns, you know. Mother couldn't take care of them. There was just too much for her, so they just covered them up. But I keep telling Adele, of course, she's not interested in that kind of work either. It's a lot of work. But I said, you should take them up, and it'd be gorgeous, you know.
Well, of course, nowadays they have ways of treating hardwood floors so that they don't require care.
That's right, so there wouldn't be that kind of care. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They bleach them and they stain them. They do all kinds of things with them they didn't do then, you know. And, but it was such a beautiful place. And there again, see, Mother worrying about Ruth and this big family and the influence on her life, so Ruth got a bedroom of her own. Mm-hmm. It's just corny, but that's the way she felt about it. She just was so afraid that that would influence me, and of course, what good did that do? I didn't have a family anyway. Mm-hmm. But then that's the way she thought about it at the time, you know.
You were a sophomore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tell me about your high school experience in Cody.
Oh, I just loved high school. Of course, the thing was, I had an ideal situation. I wasn't very interested in my education, and I had such nice friends. Of course, it was difficult for Mother and Dad, I'm sure, to bring us into the effects of no church up here, see. But in a way, it was better because when we did start a branch, we had to do everything. As a result, we got a lot of experience. At a later date, when Joe Livingston was a stake president here, I went to him because Quinn and I had not had a job for a long time. And I was worried about it because of Quinn being a convert, see. And I said, we really should have a job, you know. And he said, Ruth, you can't have it your way all your life. The place has grown. There are lots of people that want jobs. I never thought of it that way. I'd always got in on everything. If the president of the church was here, I met him and I had dinner with him, and he was always a guest at my dad's home. And we had all these nice influences that I was used to, and I didn't like the fact that I wasn't a part of it.
Sure.
And he could understand it, but he wouldn't give me any concessions over it. He said, "That's just the way it is, Ruth. You can't have things your way all your life."
For that reason, we have something of a desire that our children, as they marry, somehow find themselves in places where they
That's
do
right.
have a need for people to
Yeah,
help.
Mary Louise, I don't know whether she told you anything about it, but she said there's so many times that she can remember, you know, going down here to the Odd Fellows Hall, and there wouldn't be any priesthood there for Sunday school, for instance. I mean, it was that scarce. And so they'd have a prayer and they'd have a class, and she'd tell all of the crazy things that used to happen, you know, as a result of them being left that way. And because it would be during conference or something, see. I mean, Dad would have never left him that way, but that was the way it was then. And then they'd go somewhere, see, after they'd gone through the preliminaries. And but we had a lot of a good experience that way. And of course, that's the way I feel about the mission field, Hank. You go into the mission field now, and these kids come home and they can't make a talk. I mean, they just appall me. But it's because they go into a mission where they don't need them.
Right.
They're supposed to be working with other people, and they don't ever call on them in church. They don't. And when I was in the mission field, we had to do everything.
Yes, I was a branch president.
Sure, we had to do everything. I mean, we had to lead the singing, we were the program, we had to do everything. As a result, it was great growth for us. Didn't do anything for the members, but it was great growth for us.
Sure. My first Sunday, on my first assignment in Brazil, I gave a brief talk and sang a song, both in Portuguese, and I couldn't speak the language.
Well, that's what I mean, see? But that's the way you learn. Oh, I just feel sorry for kids that are on. And you know, I think it's just because they're dumb about, or didn't do anything in their mission field until I went out again. Then I realized that a lot of it is because they just don't need you anymore.
Sure, the church has grown too
That's
much.
right. And I resent it. And that's wrong. I mean, we should be grateful that the church is growing.
Yes.
But I resent it because I'm not a part of it.
Sure. For the missionaries of today, of course, it gives them it makes them much more effective because they don't have their time divided between kind of administrative
That's right.
kind of sorts of things and preaching.
That's right. And you know, and the members grow, you know, more too. You know, we should have insisted that they do some of these
Sure.
things, but no, we just get up and do it.
Tell me a little bit more about your high school experience. What did
Well,
you do?
there again,
aside
as I
from
started to say, it was ideal because, I mean, the way I looked at it, which is maybe wrong, but there were only 3 or 4 girls in my class. All the rest of them were boys. What kind of an ideal situation could you have, you know? So I had a wonderful time in high school. Dad would see that we went to all the dances. I'd go to the dance sometimes 5 nights a week, Hank.
No kidding?
We'd go to Cowley for all the pavilion parties. We'd go to Byron. We'd go to Lowell. And Dad would drive us, see? I don't know how only I think he wanted us to be happy being in Cody. And all we did was just get all of the Cody kids interested in those people down there. To this day, you know, people like Jack Vogel and Rex Vanderhoff and those people, Ray Gould and those people, they all still, their memories of high school are going to those parties down at the down at the,
Which you involved them in.
sure, that we involved them in, because it was just one big party all the time, because we all learned to dance, and we learned to dance well, and we just loved it, and we just went all of the time. And you know, the proms and all that sort of thing, Mother, I can't remember ever having, of course, there again, things are different now. They don't have parties and dances like they used to. It's just like the fraternities and things in college. They're not important like they used to be. But Mother never let me go to a party I didn't have a new dress. And I was always, and there's one she made.
Yes.
And if I wanted white lace, I got white lace. I mean, she just indulged me something, oh, amazing. And so, I mean, I just had a wonderful time in high school, just wonderful. And not just because there were that many boys, but they included us. It wasn't dating one-on-one, see, it was, they'd all go together and then they'd pick us up, see. And there were only 3 or 4 girls that ever got to go with them. And I was one of them. And we just did everything together, and going everywhere together, and we were all so busy, and no wonder I was skinny. I never did anything but dance and go places, you know. It was great. Had a great time.
And in relation to school, you were in the pep squad?
Yes, oh yes, sure, sure.
And you sang in a quartet?
Yes.
How did that get started?
I can't remember, Hank, I really can't.
Who was in the quartet with you?
Esther Kogel, Pat Griever. Let's see, let me think, who was the other one? I can't remember, Hank, isn't that awful? But I can, but...
It's amazing that you remember it at all.
Yes, yeah. And as I say, I don't mean to imply that I didn't do anything in school, because I did, but I sure had a lot of social interests in those days, because we went so much, and Dad and Mother let us do it. The first, of course, Dad would never let me date till I was 16. But there again, I didn't care, because we were going together. That was more fun. And of course, it was great at a dance, because you could learn to dance with anybody. And instead of having to dance with one person all evening, they didn't know what they were doing, you know. But, oh, you know, I got to be the prom queen and all this jazz, you know, it's important to kids that age, you know, it gives them a lot of self-confidence.
Do you remember your graduation?
Sure. I think I was talking to you last night about being in the old Temple Theater, remember? And there were only 30 of us that graduated. And I can remember setting up the benches over there at the old Temple Theater, you know, for us. And of course, we didn't have cap and gowns those days, you know. We just graduated. Yeah.
And after graduation, what?
Well, you know, there again, Hank, things that I don't remember, so, I mean, they didn't influence you in any way, I'm sure, was that, you know, we were going through a depression. And yet Dad was doing better than anybody I knew. I mean, he really was doing well. I can remember when DeVere Hinckley got $1 an hour running the oiler for Dad. And he was the highest paid man Dad had, you know. And you know, so Dad wouldn't let me ever have a job. He would never let me go out and get a job as such.
Because he didn't think it was necessary.
Yeah, well, and also that he felt like there were people who really needed a job.
Of course.
See. He said, Ruth, there are men and women who need that work, and you don't need it. And not even a soda fountain job would he let me have. So I led a pretty soft life. Mother wouldn't let me take care of the kids, and Dad wouldn't let me work. It was pretty soft. When I look back at it, it was. But
partly, I bet part of it is because you're their firstborn.
Oh, sure, sure. And there again, Lloyd Mack always maintained anyway that I was Dad's favorite, and you know, and of course I always denied it, but
It'd be hard for it not to be so.
yeah, that's right.